I just watched the TMZ interview again, and that's no easy task because it's 90 minutes long, and I took notes. But the first thing that caught my attention, and I know it caught others' attentions, was the reference to a movie called Rashomon, which I haven't seen. It's done by a Japanese filmmaker, Kurosawa. So how they describe the movie is an event that's viewed from different perspectives. And let's face it, that's what we have with Michael Jackson's death. There are those that believe he's dead, there are those who believe he was murdered, and there are those that believe he's still alive. But the doctor says that he was a heroin addiction specialist and that he met Bill Wilson, who founded AA, and he made this statement, and I think I know what he meant, but what he said was, when someone is addicted, he's not always addicted to drugs. You know, the disease, and they say it's a disease, stays with you forever. And that pertains to addiction. So if you're an addict, you're an addict every day of the rest of your life. You can keep it in check by not indulging, period. The doctor kept saying that propofol was Michael Jackson's drug of choice. Well, I'm not even going to go there, but just because propofol was his drug of choice, I think anything that would sedate him might satisfy him if he was truly an addict. Which I don't know. I really have no idea. I can't say. He makes the statement, I don't know if he was addicted. But before he makes that statement, I don't know if he was addicted. I think he was talking about Demerol or to narcotics. Earlier he said, yes, he was an addict. I had to get him off drugs 2 different times. Do you remember when Michael Jackson met Dr. Conrad Murray? He asked Dr. Arnold Klein what his take was on Afro-American black doctors. Dr. Klein makes a statement, and maybe he was referencing an article that wasn't really clear, but he makes the statement, Michael showed up with all these marks all over his body. But then when the interview starts talking about Michael Jackson being riddled with all these injection marks, the doctor got all defensive, and he asked the crew that was out in the, he's like, who saw the movie? Did he have injection marks on his neck? Did you see his neck? Did you see his body? He sounded like he was truly offended or insulted that he wasn't at the memorial. He mentioned that a couple times, that Ed Winters, who worked in the medical examiner's office, I think, he was in the 3rd row at the memorial, but Klein wasn't invited to the memorial. And at some point during that interview, we were reminded that there are 2 different investigations going on at this point. LAPD is looking at Dr. Murray, and the DEA is looking at all the doctors that might be involved with prescribing drugs to him. He also at one point mentions that the family was estranged from Michael, and he hadn't, they hadn't been over there to talk to him in quite a long time. But then 2 days before Michael Jackson died, there was, they were trying to get an intervention together. So how would they know he needed an intervention if they hadn't been in contact with him at all? And here's the thing. What Dr. Klein said was they reached out to all these drug addiction doctors who all refused to participate. That all those doctors right now should be feeling totally responsible for Michael Jackson's death. The ones who refused to be a part of this supposed or alleged intervention, because had they shown up for it, he obviously would have still been alive. And my final question on that one was, if Dr. Klein was indeed a heroin addiction specialist. He is an addiction specialist, and why wasn't he contacted to conduct this intervention? The wildest thing that he said as a doctor was where he said, he said this, he said, speeds aren't addictive. And he's referring to methamphetamines, and then he says, he gets real weird, saying, who here has done crystal meth? Anyone know any crystal meth addicts? He says that crystal meth addicts are the worst addicts in the world, right after he said speeds aren't addictive. He also said that it would be okay for him to prescribe crystal meth to Michael Jackson because that wasn't his drug of choice. At one point, the interviewer was talking about Michael Jackson's collapsed veins and something about trying to put an IV in the back of his knee, and they had to inject him with sodium bicarbonate. I'm not a medical professional, but that's baking soda. I'm not quite sure how baking soda would have... Maybe that's what you use to uncollapse a vein or whatever it is they were trying to do. Dr. Klein talks... Oh, and if I'm right, if the sodium bicarbonate isn't something that you would try to inject him with for collapsed veins, the doctor didn't correct him on that. Dr. Klein also says that in New York at one point, Michael Jackson swallowed his tongue and was running down the streets of New York because the doctor that he had just seen had given him athenazine, and he had to reverse it with Benadryl. I mean, Benadryl is an over-the-counter allergy drug that you would just use for, I don't know, bee stings or allergies. I don't get how that could help with swallowing your tongue. And so now he's talking about AEG. And he's talking about, all the money they're making off of Michael Jackson's death and everything that's followed. And he makes the statement, and I'll probably be shot on the way out of here. So the interviewer says something about foul play, and he says, oh, no foul play. He makes the statement, I don't want to talk about his urination, which of course leads into the subject of the way he urinates. He brings up how on his last visit, he made a point, which was 5 days before he died, he made a point to say goodbye to everybody. I mean, everybody. And that weeks before he died, he was doing very strange behavior, dancing and singing for the patients and just not sure of himself, acting a little bit nervous, not comfortable with who he was. So that just got me to think maybe it really wasn't him, or maybe he was just nervous over something that he was planning. The interviewer talked about this creditor's claim that he had on the Jackson estate, something about a $50,000 bill, and this man being so rich, why even bring up this $50,000 bill, which would bring to light 51 IM injections of Demerol. The thing that really wrapped it up for me was when he says, I'm a good person who lives on clues. I can live by clues.